Well, welcome everyone to Two Qs with Lisa Ward. I am your host, and today our guest is Miss Dallisa. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you for having me on your show, Lisa. It's fun to get together and meet someone new and talk about life and business and all that good stuff. So, yeah, I'm actually a fifth generation psychic medium, and that's a pretty rare profession. But I have been doing this work for about a decade, and I channel, I am a clairvoyant, which most people have heard of that. It's the ability to see imagery and symbols. I hear messages, which is clairaudience, and I will feel information in my physical body, which is called clairsentience. And the gifts all came in 10 years ago. And over this last decade, I've built it into a global company. And I have people that I work with from all over the world that are clients and students. And it's a really fun job to have. But I like to explain a little bit about like what is a psychic medium and why I described the clairvoyance and clairaudience and such, because some people's heads that are listening right now are probably spinning because they might not even know what that is, or maybe they've seen Sylvia Brown on TV or Tyler Henry or
Hmm.
Teresa Caputo, so they might have somewhat of an idea of what that entails, but other people may have never heard of it before.
Yeah, very cool. But fifth generation. I don't know of anybody that's fifth generation anything.
Yeah, I get it from my dad's side of the family.
Very cool.
So my dad is very intuitive. My grandmother and I would sit in her living room and talk about ghost stories and UFOs and what premonitions that she was getting. And I actually, when I had my live stage show in Las Vegas, I designed the set to look like her living room. And I
Oh, how
always,
cool.
yeah, I always like honor her in my show in some way. Now my show is in different locations, and so it's not as easy to take a set with me. But yeah, she would tell me stories about her grandmother and how her grandmother would see spirits on the farm. And so, yeah, it's been in the family for a really long time, but it was not what I thought I was going to do for a living. Like, that's for sure. But I do think we all have gifts and talents. And when mine came in, I just decided why not lean into it and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it wasn't like because you weren't first gen, so it wasn't totally, an out of body experience or what the heck is happening to me.
Yeah, thank God, right? Because I may have thought I was losing my mind. And
Something, yeah.
yeah, and I remember having some trepidation before I announced to people that I had these gifts and what I was going to do with them. And I thought, oh my gosh, people are going to judge me. They've known me as this person that's in the hospitality industry in Las Vegas. I worked in the casino business for a long time. They may know me as a person that owns a dating and matchmaking company. And then all of a sudden, here I am like, hey, sorry, I am changing what I'm doing for a living and it's completely out of left field. So there's a little bit in the beginning of, how do I share this with people without alienating myself or making people feel uncomfortable if they're not into psychic mediumship. And so I got over that pretty quickly though.
Well, that's good. Awesome. Well, I'll go ahead and get into our questions. So I ask everyone the same two questions. And your first one is, what do you want that you don't already have?
I've really sat with this. I'm big into manifestation, as you could probably believe, and I know that our thoughts have power. And so I sat with it. And what do I want that I don't already have? And my brain goes to business. That's just where I function. I love business and entrepreneurship. So I imagine myself going out on stage, and I do that regularly with my psychic stage show, but this is a little bit different. So my vision for it is almost like a TED Talk, but where I go out on stage and the auditorium is filled with people. And I don't need all of the people for my ego, but I want to be on stage where I can share from my heart what it means to live your life without apology, and to be proud of who you are and what those gifts and talents are that you bring to the world, and celebrate that we're all unique. And I want to be on that stage giving a heartfelt speech of some kind, some connection, some talk, where everyone in the audience is really sitting with themselves and hearing the words and remembering their own magic. And so that's really where I'm putting my arrow, my northern star of where I want to go next with my messages. Because I think sometimes, especially in this world we're living in, we're missing some inspiration on some days. And we may wake up one morning and feel really heavy about what's going on either in our own life or what's going on in the world. And it can be pretty easy to get into a spiral of fear, or to get yourself into a dark corner or a dark tunnel. And the more I can use my gifts to infuse magic, not literally, but magic and hope into people's lives more, and I will feel like I have achieved more of my professional mission.
I love that. Do you have any personal like habits or exercises that you do? Like if you sense, oh, no, 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 we're not going down that path today. We're going to shake it up. Do you do anything?
Yeah, I mean, there are so many things that you can do to shift your energy, but the thing that I like to do, and it's kind of strange saying I like doing it, but if I feel myself going into some kind of fear spiral or fear story, or I'm upset about something that I see in the world, or I feel like there's some kind of injustice, which is a big one for me, I will sit down with myself and I will ask myself, why do I feel this way?
Hmm.
And I take 100% accountability for what I am feeling, because I realize that whatever I am feeling, that's coming from someplace inside of myself. And just because I'm being triggered by something in the external world, it still is connected to something that's inside of me. So if I'm mad about something, I will ask, why am I mad about this? And I'll have this conversation, or I'll journal it out. And I keep asking myself, well, why do I feel that way? Or why does that upset me? And I keep going down the rabbit hole until I find the deepest part of myself that usually feels like it's not being heard or seen or valued. And I just send love to myself. Um, because really, when we get upset about anything going on in our lives or the world or the people around us or something that happened to us, that feeling of being upset usually is never about the thing we're actually upset about. It's something that goes a lot deeper than that. And liberation really does come when we don't point the finger outside of ourselves as they're the reason I'm upset, or they did this, therefore I'm the victim. And so if we can step out of the victim story
But
and get
that's
really,
easy.
it's a lot of people are in that victim
Mm-hmm.
rescuer. You know, you've got a lot of folks walking around in the world today that are either playing the victim, and maybe they're hearing this, podcast and going, oh my God, like, wow, I never thought about it like that. And on the other side of that line of energy is usually someone around them that is a fixer or a rescuer. And
Mm-hmm.
so somebody may be listening to this and going, I don't really identify as much as like being a victim of my own story or my own life or the world. But man, I really try to fix everyone and save everyone. And I hardly ever say no. And, I always say yes and show up with bells and whistles on. And that is part of a victim triangle, of a drama triangle. The other point of the triangle is, you can call it a persecutor or a villain. Um, But I find a lot of people in the world are usually on the rescuer victim spectrum of energy. And so I say get curious about what you're feeling and why, and do that inner healing, because then you'll actually go through life with a lot more ease. Like it just feels easier when you're not going around every corner feeling like another ball's going to drop.
Mhm. Mhm. I think, okay, so some of the things you just said, I think females stereotypically are the ones that fix it for everybody else, especially if they are a mother. They're always taking care of the kids, taking care of the spouse. Or if you're a team lead, you're taking care of the team, making sure you're fixing all the things for them. Um, but then something else you just said, oh shoot. See, sometimes I wish I write things down when people are talking so that I'm actually like actively listening. Not what am I going to say next? But yeah, I
You
think
can listen back to
females,
your own episode.
like, right? Yeah, part two. Oh, I guess it'll come back to me. But yes, it's very much and I think social media has jacked us up with the victimhood. I mean, we even coined new terms and phrases. Like, it's just like, it's so gross. I'm like, why, why are we all spiraling? Um, but
Yeah, all of our insides are coming up to the surface.
mm-hmm,
And so anything that's unhealed within us is coming to the surface.
mm-hmm.
So, yeah,
Oh, now I
yeah,
remember. You asking about, well, why? Well, why? Well, why? It's like a kid trying to understand how things work. And we talk about this in one of our other episodes from this year. It's digging in deeper and just ask, like, be just be a kid again. It's okay. Just be innocent and continue to ask why and dig a little further and maybe have some imagination about it. Um, but probably I think most folks don't want to know why, so they don't ask, why am I feeling this way? I am mad because I'm mad, not needing to know, okay, well, where does this actually come from?
yeah, because under anger, I usually see a lot of sadness,
Yeah.
but it takes that questioning and that line of curiosity of to get there,
Mm-hmm.
because it's never really about the anger. There's always stuff underneath it.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably see that in relationships. And that it was the like last straw. They said something, they looked at you funny, commented about your shirt, or whatever the thing was, and you blow up. It's like, that's not actually what I'm mad about. I'm mad about this. And it's the why. Gotta get back to it. So very
Absolutely.
cool.
I use the example sometimes about road rage. You
Yeah.
know, you're stuck in traffic, you're grasping onto the steering wheel and you're so mad. And usually it's the feeling of not being in control. So people that have issues with road rage usually have control issues. When I see it energetically, and that when they're in that space of road rage, um, if they can get into a space within their own mind of it's okay that I'm not in control here. I don't need to be in control, and take themselves into that story. It'll help them step out of it a bit. But typically, the road rage example and feeling out of control, it's like you said, Lisa, it's not about the traffic. Usually there's something going on in their life that's feeling out of control, and they're looking to compensate for it in another area.
It was because they cut me off. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. But Dallas traffic is awful. That can literally put somebody in a bad mood because just people be crazy out here in Texas. I don't like driving out there, but it's an excuse to have a radio car concert.
Oh, I'm one for the car concerts and dancing. I'll have like a whole choreographed dance in the car.
Yep, I will be the entertainment for the other cars. If we're all stopped, whatever, it's fine. We'll turn on the Broadway tunes. We'll be okay. Okay, cool. Back to you're on the stage and we're changing up the messaging. What's holding you back from getting to that point?
I've thought about that too, because I am definitely a go-getter. And if I put my mind to something, I manifest it. So I don't have any issues there. And I think part of it is blasting that invitation out to the universe to have, maybe it's somebody that's putting an event together and they want to invite me to come and be a speaker at it. So I'm putting that out as a signal to the universe. But I'm also making steps in my own business. I recently started a community that's called Sacred Signals. And there's people from all over the place. And we have a Discord community, and we get on there and talk about everything from crystals and self-help books to predictions to gardening. And so I love that community just builds and builds every week that goes by. And I've shared with them, I'm thinking about doing some kind of event where we can meet in person. So I'm floating that out there. I think for me, and having such a business background, I feel like I have to have a certain number of people in the community before I go down the rabbit hole of finding a venue and, getting all of that booked out and the logistics and the costs involved with it. I'm not afraid to do it, but I think my brain is still hooked on to, getting the community that I have right now just to a bigger level before I start blending in my own in-person events. So for me, it's more of a strategy conversation that I have with myself.
Mm-hmm. Well, who's to say that the community wouldn't come if you had the event?
I
They
think
would
they
double,
would.
triple in size. Like, why
Yeah.
wait?
Yeah, I think they will. I have sat with the idea of doing something later this year, 2025.
Okay.
And I may just decide to do it. But I also know that as somebody who channels, I channel a lot of information around business. My spirit team of angels, guides, and ancestors, they give me information all the time about business. So typically what will happen is I will be sitting on my couch, relaxing, and I'll start getting a bunch of downloads about a business idea. What I suspect will happen is that there will be a random Tuesday where I'm sitting there reading a magazine, and I'll start seeing the event. I'll start seeing the stage, what's going to happen there. What's it going to be called? When is it going to happen? So I feel it's kind of hard to explain, but in
So
the
that hasn't
background,
happened yet. You've
no,
only had like little glimpse of it.
correct. And that's what I was going
Okay.
to say. It feels like it's in the background, kind of just hovering around, but it hasn't come into the forefront yet to get birthed. But I also know, based on a lot of the predictions that I get, that this year is going to be absolutely wild. And we will not recognize our lives by the time we get a year from now. There's going to be so much that changes. So I'm also sensitive to that, knowing that yes, we probably should come together in person and connect and have that community in real
Mhm.
life. But I also know that there's just going to be a lot of curveballs that we will need to account for. And so I think it's just being willing to do that dance with birthing it into the world and being open to how it turns out and not having an
Mhm.
expectation of how it has to go.
Yeah. And I think that that's a perfect description for any new business project, program, product. I mean, that's how we all, as business owners, we want it to be perfect. And, we want the numbers to be just right, but it's never going to happen that way. It never does. Sometimes we are even better than we could even have imagined it, which is phenomenal. Sometimes it's a total flop.
Yeah.
Like, well, cool. that was a hard lesson, but we'll do something different next time.
I agree. I think some of the most awesome things that happen are, obviously the things that are successful, but I would say even equally so, if not more important, are the things that don't work.
Mhm.
Because if you really are interested in business and you're sitting there thinking about the flop and you get real honest with yourself, you'll know why it flopped. You'll be able to figure it out. And with that review of the flop, and really asking yourself, gosh, what would I have done differently if I did it again? And actually making that modification, it just lends to the long-term success and sustainability that you have for your own company. Um, but I think some people, they put their tail between their legs and they get really upset or their ego is bruised that the project didn't work or that product wasn't successful in sales. But really that's where a lot of the gold is, because if that was a no, then what's the yes? So there's going to be
Mhm.
some kind of correlation, I feel, between the success and the flop. You have to kind of, be nimble and pivot, because if you can master the pivot and figure out how to shift it into something that people actually do want, you'll be successful. It's just a matter of time and being flexible.
Yeah. Yeah. And not giving up. I think that's what the difference between an employee and a business owner is. We just don't give up. You just like, okay, cool, that didn't work. Let's do something else. Versus an employee might have the mindset of, well, screw this. I'll just go work somewhere else and not actually fix the issue and then have that same issue at the next job and then at the next job. It's like, well,
It
okay.
follows you. I tell people it's the same person's energy in a different costume. So if you really don't like your boss that you have right now at your job, if you don't figure out why you don't like your boss and what's wrong there and go inside of yourself and really do that inner work, you will more than likely in the next job you get manifest the same energy dynamic, the same kind of situation. It'll be people in different costumes, they'll look different, but it'll be the same lessons that are presented to you until you learn them. But a lot of people don't know that, or they aren't aware that they just keep attracting the same things over and over until they get it healed.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I work with a lot of young households, and it's like, okay, yeah, it's the same type of issue in every industry. You're gonna have that with every team. You'll be fine. You just have to work out, how do you work around that kind of communication style, or you know, whatever team, all the different dynamics. So it's fun to go, yeah, no, that's gonna be everywhere. Good luck.
Yeah,
um
exactly.
So within your business, I'm curious, how did you go about growing it from just you to like your first hire, growing the team globally? Like, what did all of that look like?
I think it took an evolution of me. What I mean by that is I haven't met anybody that's had a really successful business right out of the gate. And it took me time to figure out why I was doing this work. What was I bringing to the marketplace or to the world that would be helpful? Because when I first started doing this work, I remember I was working out of a lady's spiritual shop, crystal store in Las Vegas. And she had this tiny little room in the back of the shop. And I was doing 20-minute readings for $20. And there would be days where I would have 15, 16 of those
Oh,
readings. And I was blowing gaskets in my own body, my energy. Like I would have to stop at an Arby's on the way home and get some roast beef to like bring my energy back into my body, which sounds weird, but it was true. I needed
protein.
I needed protein. So that's where I started from. And even before that, I was meeting with clients over the phone. And what I discovered though, and it took me a long time, was that as much as the one-off sessions were fun or interesting or curious, and I would pull some oracle cards or tarot cards and, channel messages for them, as much as those were, fun, entertainment purposes only, people will say, right? It's like, I didn't really feel like I was helping them in the way that I wanted to. I wasn't making the impact that I wanted to make. And so, like I said, it took me a long time to get there. But what I finally realized was that I like to go deeper with my clients. And usually, somebody that hires a psychic medium, they're used to going to one session and getting their list of questions asked and answered. And then they go on with their life. And maybe they go every 6 months, or maybe they go once a year for their birthday, right? But that wasn't working for me. I
It's
got
not a great
really,
business model. You have to constantly go find
oh,
new people. Yeah.
well, and I had a bunch of people. I never had to worry about clients, but I had the lady who owned the shop that I worked out of. She told me in the very beginning, she goes, if you're good, you'll never have to go out looking for clients. And she was right. I built a huge clientele. Then I opened up my own spiritual center and crystal shop, and built that up, and had a team of practitioners. I can't remember how many I had, but we'll call it maybe 10, 12
Okay.
practitioners that worked out of there. Built that all up, had the stage show in Las Vegas, and then, pandemic hits. So
Oh,
then I took everything virtual, closed the storefront. But what the virtual did for me and my company was it allowed me to reach people everywhere. So the audience grew. So instead of having a local market, then it became whoever was on social media. It just became, sky's the limit. But I still wasn't that satisfied with not making the deep impact. So eventually, where I got to be was I wanted to work with clients that wanted to do a 3-month deep dive where we talk every week,
oh, wow.
because it goes into the parts of your life where we can really talk about why are you so pissed off in traffic, and
Okay.
really get into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love those sessions because they're very satisfying. And then I also get to see the difference that it's making in the client's life, and now what goals they're going after.
Mm-hmm.
We set 90-day goals, and then they have things that they're asked to do for homework each week. So I used to be, the little kid that would teach school to my cousins and be the teacher with the chalkboard. And so I think
Cute.
I've like stepped into that energy of like, let me help shine the light in the cave for you. Like, we're going to walk through the cave and it's going to be dark, but I've got the flashlight, or you can be my co-pilot in the airplane, and we're both driving the airplane, but we're doing it together. And I'm going to help hold a mirror up to what's really going on and where you want to be and why you're not there right now. Kind of similar to the questions that you're asking in your
Mm-hmm.
podcast, which is brilliant. So it gets people thinking about where they are self-sabotaging. And so that's been really enjoyable. And then, I've gone viral on social media a few times, which has really helped increase the audience. So that's been fun to reach people that live everywhere from New Zealand to India to the UK, to all different
Wow.
parts of the US, and people coming together talking about how the world is so different, and what we're up against. But I think social media, one of the positives about it is it does really help us feel connected to people that aren't in our own community. And so that's where the business is at now, is having the online community, which a lot of people in my space of spirituality and spiritual practitioners, a lot of them have membership communities.
Okay.
But I used to have one before. I took a break from it, and I decided I was going to relaunch it, Sacred Signals, And what was fascinating with me while I was getting ready to relaunch, I sat with the pricing of it. And I decided to do $15 a month because when I looked at that number and felt into it, I didn't want anyone to have to really think long and hard if they could afford it. Now, I know some people, $15 a month can be a stretch depending on what's going on in their life right now. But for most people, they're like, okay, I can do the 15 bucks a month.
Oh, that's less than a Starbucks a week.
I know, right? And so I intentionally went with that lower price point because I didn't want people to have to really ponder if they could afford it or not.
Yeah, the barrier
So
for entry. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Because I really want people to come together that live all over the place. So so I'm building that, or it's launched, but the membership numbers are going up. You know, every
So is
day I'm
that the
getting.
number you want to be at a certain amount before you can do the on stage event?
I would say so because my experience in business, typically somebody that is paying for something, so let's say it's the $15 a month, they are the ones more than likely that would come to an in-person event.
Mm-hmm. They're already
Because I
supporting you. They already use you. Yeah.
exactly, because between Instagram and Facebook, I've got 200,000 followers. That's great, but they're not all paying for something.
Mm-hmm.
And so if somebody really does like your work, they're probably going to open their wallet and buy something at some point. Um, so yeah, I have the membership community, and then I launched a Tuesday podcast show on YouTube where we talk about astrology and my predictions.
Okay.
And then I have my life and clarity clients, which are the ones that do the deep dive every week with me. And so I love that I have a blend of things that are public and free, like the YouTube show.
Mm-hmm.
I have a low cost community. And for the people that really want to go deep, I have that more premium experience for them. So I feel like I've got things at different levels of the pyramid that people can step into. And it doesn't really matter if they don't have any money to spend or they want to invest in themselves. I've got something for everyone while also staying true to what I really love, which is making predictions and working with individuals to make a difference in their life. So I feel like I'm in a really good spot now, but it took me a decade and it took me a pandemic to take it from local to global. And it's been a process. But I think
Mm-hmm.
if you ask anybody that's been in business for a long time or several years, it's probably not where it's at today is where it started, you know, those years ago. It's
I
probably
would hope
gone through.
not.
Yeah.
Yee. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
be open.
Do you miss the brick and mortar? Do you still have a brick and mortar presence somewhere?
I don't have a brick and mortar presence. Sometimes what I'll do, like with the stage show, is go into other people's businesses, meaning there's a casino that has me in their showroom, and so I go and perform in their showroom. Or there's a historic building in Washington State that loves to have me come there during Halloween season, and so I go and do that show in the historic building. And so for me, I think what works the best is not having one brick and mortar location that I am physically tied
Mm-hmm.
to,
Mm-hmm.
but I love borrowing other people's businesses. You know, over the years, I've done things where I've even gone into somebody's store and done like a little pop up, or I'm doing card readings for people that are shopping in the store. So I love those different collaborations with other businesses, but they are doing a great job at their business, even if it's like a coffee shop or a tea place, and we want to do tarot and treats or tarot and tea. It's like I love going into where they've built their community and where they have their loyal customers. And and offering what I do to them. They've already built up that community. So I love that I can be flexible and do these collaborations with so many different kinds of people and businesses.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
it's
frankly,
fun.
the commercial real estate is so expensive to rent out that I think it's given me more flexibility in being able to do some of these other fun things with my business because I'm not having to pay a monthly rent somewhere
Hmm.
for a commercial lease. And so I appreciate that as well.
Yeah, your overhead is
Mhm.
minimal. I mean, I work remotely, so it's great. All I need is good internet and I'm good to go.
You definitely need good internet.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's amazing. And I've seen so many talking about pivot. You've got to continue to pivot. Companies that were started during the pandemic or had to completely change. How do we stay alive? I think that goes back to, I mean, it's all the same themes. Something happened. How are we going to respond to this? Are we going to analyze it and figure out how to grow from it? Or are we going to throw a temper tantrum? Which one makes us more money? I think we're going to go with the figure it out and pivot and grow, not temper tantrum.
Exactly.
Not to boil it all down to those two things, but I mean, that's learning how to grow from the stuff that happens in our life. Like as it comes across your plate, do something
Yeah.
good with it.
And I feel like just inserting here on your point that we should bring our whole selves into our work because there are things that happen to us, every single one of us that happens outside of work, whether it's a death of somebody close to us or a family member, um, something financially that destroys us. Um, we all have things that we have been through that have shaped us. And you might not on the surface think that it is has anything to do with your company that you own or the job that you work at. It all has
Mm-hmm.
everything to do with everything. And so if you're even thinking somebody listening is like, oh, I really wanted to start a life coaching business, but I don't know, I've never done it before. I'm like, you've lived a life.
Yeah.
Like you have experiences that you can infuse into any kind of business that you want to have. So I think, not separating out like, oh, I've got to have that work persona or I have to have that personal persona. It's like, bring your whole self, be authentic, be true to who you are and what makes you happy and keep, tuning into that and adjust as needed.
Mm-hmm. And people will more likely work with you if you are your actual self. It's a lot easier to be your actual self than a fake person. So,
Yeah, they read it off of you and they might not know, the words to describe it, but they feel different around you. Like they feel like, oh, I just really like being around that person, I feel like
mm-hmm.
they really get me, they really listen. And it's because more likely than not, they've done a lot of work on themselves and they're just like, here's who I am. And they're probably also really clear on how they communicate and what their boundaries are. And so we like being around people that make us feel good. And
Yeah.
usually it's the people that, have big hearts and really care about the work they're doing in the world.
Yeah. 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 And something else you said, but going in deeper and actually helping people figure out either what's holding them back because they're stuck for something or the hurt part, like actually finding the why after all of the questions. Um, I had somebody ask me, well, why do you like doing what you do? It's like, I get more joy out of my clients' successes than I do my own. I got a phone call literally yesterday. Um, Client been working on citizenship, and as of tomorrow, they will be an American citizen. And they were quizzing me on stuff. I was like, oh, this is embarrassing. I don't know the answers. That's bad. It's stuff like that. It's has nothing to do with finances, but now because they are a US citizen, they can actually apply for the job that they finished the certification for. They're gonna, their income's gonna triple from what they had previously done. It does affect your finances, but I got joy. That made my day yesterday. I was screaming during most of the phone calls, like, it's so exciting. So it's
And you
joy,
should
like
be.
joy of that versus, okay, cool, I got my workout in. Go me.
Yeah, I mean, it does boil down to that. I think if you're leading a business with heart, it really is about the people that you're serving.
Hmm.
Even when you're the
And
leader
people
of the
can
company.
tell.
They can tell, and I think even just on a deep spiritual level, I've done a lot of mediumship over the years, which is connecting with people that have passed away. And I know that when we pass, we connect with the people that made an impact in our life. And all that to say, I feel like once we get over to the other side after this life that we've had, how we treated other people really, really does matter. And it
Mhm.
goes well beyond just one interaction that you have with somebody here on earth. And that those bonds that we make with people because we care, those last a really long time.
That's awesome. I like that. I like that a lot. Um, Going back to business, not to totally we could talk about all that kind of stuff the whole time. Um, Best piece of advice you have received. What was it?
Oh, best piece of advice. I feel like pivot is probably the best piece of advice. I remember when I had my dating and matchmaking company, I was chatting with, they call him the entrepreneur in residence, and this was at Texas Christian University. And I remember sitting there with him talking about, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do with this company. And I want people to connect in real life. And I want to help people set up their online dating profiles. And I remember kind of basically pitching this idea to him just to get his feedback. And a journalist had written an article about me and they quoted him. And he said something to the effect of, oh, Dallisa will be successful because she'll be able to master the pivot.
Mm.
And I remember like that sticking with me, like how we were just talking about bonds and how, the other side and all that. It's like that one line from this gentleman who'd been a very successful businessman who took the time to go listen to me pitch my company and say, she's got that pivot down. So that's kind of stuck with me over the years of if you are in business long enough, there will be something that will go sideways.
Mhm.
There will be inevitably a fire that happens symbolically that you're going to have to figure out what to do about it. And so if you can go into it, not all doom and gloom, but if you can go into your business like every day, every week, every year, knowing that everything changes
Mhm.
and knowing that you're strong enough to get through it and that you will figure it out, then that sets you, above and beyond a lot of other business owners out there. Because at the end of the day, if you don't believe in yourself and you don't believe that you can figure it out, you're not going to be successful long term.
Neither will your customers. They won't buy from you. Yeah.
Mhm.
They'll
Yeah.
smell that first. Yeah.
Yeah. People know when they're being scammed, and maybe they don't know what the scam is or what the business owner isn't quite being truthful with or transparent about. They might not be able to put their finger on it, but they'll feel it. They'll have a hunch that like, something just doesn't feel right here.
Mhm.
And a lot of people will listen to that and walk away and go find a different business or a different person to help them. But there are people that are like, yeah, I feel like something's off here, but let's just go ahead. And then they realize that they were right. And their intuition really does tell them when they're sitting with somebody who really cares versus somebody who just wants to make a buck.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I can see how all of this, like with the dating, I'd want to know about all the dating stuff too. 'Cause that would have been interesting to then helping people just in general. Um, yeah, God, we could literally do another hour, but I'm not gonna do that to you. Um, so besides the presentation at some point on a beautiful stage with a room full of people, what other things are coming that your big projects you're working on this year?
I think this year is going to be a year of big collaborations. So I just got done recently. I went in studio in Los Angeles for a podcast, someone else's podcast that will be coming out here in the next few months or so. And that host has a massive audience, which is awesome because the host is a really nice person. And I
Yay!
love and I love seeing really great heart-centered people grow these massive brands and businesses, which he has. And so we filmed that episode already. And I just feel there's momentum in the air to be doing more and more of those big conversations, but also not losing the moments of sacredness and a kind of intimacy with people, not a sexual intimacy, but just being able to sit with someone in a quiet moment and talk about what's really going on with them.
Yeah.
So I think it'll be an interesting year filled with really big moments that will have massive reach, which is fun as somebody who just loves business and creativity and helping people remember their magic. So that'll be really fun this year. But then also not losing the micro and not
Mhm.
losing why I got into this a decade ago. Because when it starts to get really big and you start to really have a big audience, I think it can be a bit more challenging to find how to connect one on one with people in a way that still feels vulnerable and honest and impactful. So
Mhm.
it's something that'll be on my radar for this year.
I love that. I mean, that's going back to why you started it to begin with. It's continue to help individual people, but got to get the message out. So you have to, it's a good fine balance. And I think that's challenging for business owners when you do have multiple, say, product lines or services available. And you've got the one that it's always the 80-20 rule, at least for us. Um, 80% of the business comes from 20% of the clientele, and then vice versa. Um, so it's how do you focus and find the balance between, okay, well, this really big thing's going to expose me to all of these amazing people to have future growth, but you still have to work with your current people. Don't
Mhm.
alienate them and piss
Yeah.
them off because you got to keep them happy and keep them paying customers so that they continue to refer you out and that service line continues to grow. So I think that's always a challenge, no matter what industry you're in, to find the happy balance of continuing to dedicate time and develop each of the different service lines or product lines, um, so that you're not stuck. You continue to pivot. So if something does flounder, okay, cool. Well, let's dedicate more time to something else.
Mhm.
Um, you keep saying magic. Um, that's probably just my Disney days. I did the college internship in Florida, and it truly is magical, but that's because of the business model. So a lot of thought had to go through that. It feels magical in the moment because poof, it's raining, and then all of a sudden there's a cart with umbrellas for sale. That wasn't an afterthought. That was on purpose. It's literally in the back of the shop, or it's in the underground tunnel, and poof, there it is, just waiting to be sold. So it is lots of, so yeah, I might be pushing you to do your event, like get it on the calendar, but there does need to be some thought process before you actually get to it, because then it will feel like magic. It will be ease. And the people
Yeah,
that do attend
I
do
agree.
experience what you want them to experience.
I agree. I think leaving space for authenticity while also having enough framework to where it can flow easier is kind of a good combination. But yeah, your comment about the umbrellas, I love that example. And so one thing that I've been doing is because I do a lot of Zooms with my membership community and share my exclusive predictions there. But one thing I started doing was before I started recording the Zoom and everybody was, entering onto the Zoom, I would play a song. And they never knew what song was going to play, but they did know that I would think about it and I would see what song kind of emerged in my mind. And maybe there was a song that would correlate to the topic that we were going to be talking about in that Zoom. And just that little thing has been really interesting to watch because now people come on early. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to sit there and say, be on time. Yep. So they get there early. And then in the comments, they start talking about their memories that they've had with that song, or they love that artist, or they love that verse. And it's like, wow. So it's even taking that in a micro way of how people can come together over something like music, and something that costs me nothing to do.
Maybe a few
But
minutes to figure out,
yeah,
okay, what song am I playing
yeah,
today?
exactly. But it gives people a point of connection to
Mm-hmm.
come together with. And so, yeah, creating those magical moments, they don't have to be grandiose. They
Yeah.
don't have to be. But I think anyone, regardless of what business they have, can create a moment that feels just a bit of magical.
Yeah. Surprise and delight your people,
Mhm.
as we used to
Yeah.
say in the retail world.
Yep. I know that one from my Las Vegas days in the casinos. Surprise and delight. Yes.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Gotta love it. Awesome. Well, any other piece of advice you could give to fellow listeners? Not just advice you've received, but any advice you could give to other people.
Yeah, I would say get quiet and figure out what it is you actually want out of your life. And nobody can magically gift you that time. You're going to have to find it. You're going to have to carve it out on your calendar. And you're going to have to spend a little bit of time sitting asking yourself those why questions
Mm-hmm.
and get clear on if anything was possible and you could get through any roadblock, what would you do? And I think that question can scare the hell out of some people. And some people are afraid of actually sitting down and asking the question because then once they identify it and they feel it, then they want it. And if they don't go and get it, they're feeling like they're holding themselves back. And so the question is a powerful one. So be ready for the things that start shifting in your mind and in your life around that question if you're really going to dig into it and do it. But everything you've ever wanted to know about yourself is all within you. And so it just takes asking the right questions. And yeah, and if they feel like they want to do the psychic quiz, I have a psychic quiz on my website. It's free.
Okay,
And
cool.
if they've listened to this and they're like, oh, I wonder if I have intuition. Everyone actually can learn how to do this and tap into their intuition and their abilities more. So I have a free psychic quiz, and that's at spiritandspark.com. And you can answer 7 questions, and it will tell you what gift you align with the most, and then it gives you a little bit of information of how to develop that a bit more. So our intuition is our superpower.
Yeah, you need to know what it is so you can use it.
Exactly.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining today. This was fantastic. We could literally do another episode. Because I want to learn about that dating. I could
Kind
talk
of,
about that for a whole hour too.
no, kind of a dumpster fire, but yeah, we could talk about it.
Even more so then. Awesome. Well, thank you for joining, and I hope you all tune in to our next episode.
Thanks, Lisa.